Hello, this is Ken Ferry with this week's Boots in the Field Report. The hammer's down everywhere on harvest. A lot of beans have come out in the past week. Most reports coming in swinging from the low 60s to the upper 70s. I am seeing more swing in bean yields in the same neighborhood than normal. Many years, you tend to stay within a 5 bushel range when weather conditions were similar. Seeing a wider spread than that this year. Some of the swing is in maturity groups, especially in the dry areas. Some of the fuller season beans took advantage of the late September. Some of the shorter season beans just got caught in the middle of all that dry weather. Some fields were tagged with white mold more than I expected. Now, we saw white mold on our farm visits, but I didn't think it would show up in yield as strong as it may be. Growers are seeing the sclerotia show up in the grain tanks, and they look like rat droppings in the grain tanks. Growers are saying the more rat droppings in the tank, the lower the yield. Some of these areas did show up in our aerial images this summer, but they weren't very visible from the road driving by. Now, as the guys will get to them with the combine, when they hit those areas, they're seeing more sclerotia in the tank and the yields are dropping. So combine operators, if you're seeing a lot of what looks like rat droppings in the grain tank, make a note of that for the pest team if they don't already know it, for later references when we're going through the yield maps. It is interesting that we have two diseases, one in corn and one in beans, where the sporing part looks like droppings. We have tar spot in corn that looks like fly droppings, and white mold in beans that looks like rat droppings. Both pretty crappy diseases. You guys can put your own adjectives on those as you want. Most of the harvest is happening in the beans, but some corn is getting knocked out as well. Reports coming in from a lot of growers, the May corn is outdoing the April corn. One grower had 2 planting dates in the same field with the same hybrid, 10 days apart. The 10-day later corn was 16 days better. And I would expect that to be the case when this corn came up in 5 days and if the rains hit you at the right time. Guys are complaining beans are still cutting hard and dusty, but they're getting moistures down around 8 and 9% on the beans. With these conditions, we got to stay on top of the harvest loss, both at the head and in the machine. We knocked out the corn teaching plots here at the campus last week. So far, the crew has taken over 100 weights off these small plots, and we still have some beans left to harvest. It was great to get the corn off so we could get started our prep work for next year's college. We were able to get some tillage strips done, we got some cover crops seeded, and we put in a block of wheat. We planted the wheat so we can do some live tillage breakouts next year. It was so dry, we were planning on dragging out the irrigation gun to make sure it got up. But the good Lord gave us 7/10 rain the following day. I love it when a plan comes together. We'll put the data from our teaching plots in the winter college, January 5th. These plots are only teaching plots, they don't have a lot of replication in them. But the college attendees always want to know what the plots did that they visited during the summer, so we'll add it into our virtual college this winter. We had a series of 4 different starter plots in the campus here that ranged from 19 to 21 bushel increase. Now, that was surprising because this corn did come up in 5 days. I don't expect those gains to hold when we get out into our real plots on the field scale outside of the campus. Here at the campus, our sulfur timing and product plots showed a gain of about 7 to 12 bushel, depending on the product that we used. So that was interesting. Our one and done plots, where we put all the N on in one shot and put it up against what we call the full meal deal, where we break that same N rate across different timings, showed a 10 to 12 bushel advantage to breaking the N rates up. This too is kind of surprising, being how N friendly this year was. In our small fixed flex plots, where we plant hybrids at 22,000, and we plant those same hybrids at 36,000, and we try to measure how that hybrid flexes and how much it flexes from 22 to 36. In our 22,000 side of the plot, range from 180 bushel to 233 bushel. On the 36,000 side of the plot, yields swung from 242 to 307 bushel. It seems crazy. Some hybrids can reach 233 bushel on a planted population of 22,000. Now, Jared took out one of our full-scale fixed flex plots this week, had 16 hybrids in it. The 22,000 side of the plot went from 198 bushel to the acre to 250 bushel, with an average of 227. The 36,000 planted side of the plot went from 252 to 285, with an average at 272. Now, ear samples are taken from these plots for our hand harvest this fall, and that's where we'll identify where this flex is coming from. The information from these plots is helping to move the needle quite a bit for our multi-hybrid guys. One thing showing up in the plots are the L1, L2 hybrids having some trouble depending on maturity and rainfall and the time of that rainfall event. Some of the areas were dry enough in June, early July that some of the L1 hybrids took a hit in yield. The L1 hybrids are the ones that flex the ear down under stress, cob and all, pre-tassel. So they're going to be flexing that away before the tassel comes out. So if you see short ears, but they're filled to the tip, likely that's what we call an L1 hybrid, and it got caught in a dry spell somewhere in that June, early July range before tassel. I didn't think we were dry enough to trigger that, but we are seeing that show up in the lighter soils in the drier areas. In some cases, the L2 hybrids, and L2 hybrids are the ones that flex from tassel to R4, they got caught as well. Now these hybrids are going to show abortion on the tip, so you're going to have a short ear, but you're going to see a lot of aborted tip kernels. Now the September rains with these hybrids help them gain some of that back in depth, especially if they happen to be an L1 or L2 and a D hybrid, they could make more of that back. So operators of those combines, you see a surprising drop in yield, stop and check, one, for harvest loss, and then also look at the stand, make sure we didn't lose the stand, but look at those ears. You know, are they aborted tips or are they truncated ears? And if you're not sure, keep some back or take some pictures so we can reference them later. A number of scouts are telling me to make the kernel counts match the bushels harvested, they have to divide by 55 and 60. And I'm seeing that too, some pretty large kernels. This means a lot of the yield that we're dealing with this year came at the end of the season due to the great September that we had. And of course, lack of disease throughout the season here locally. Soil testing crews are staying right with the harvesters. Don't forget to let us know when you clean up those fields that are due for fall testing so our crew can get in there behind them. We want to keep at it. I talked to a grower in northeast Iowa on Friday morning who got shut out of cutting beans because of a snow squall. So keep the hammer down. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.